May 26, 2026. And U.S. intelligence has just released a classified assessment that should make every shipping CEO on the planet put down their coffee and freeze in their tracks. Iran has restored operational access to 30 of its 30 missile sites along the Strait of Hormuz. 30 of the 30 is not a partial restoration, it's a nearly complete return to operation of the entire coastal missile network, fully armed and aimed directly at the world's most important oil hub. This narrow waterway, just 21 nautical miles wide, handles approximately 20% of the world's seaborne oil trade. A fifth of global oil supplies is effectively controlled by the ICC, which simultaneously has both a $2 million barrier and a finger on the launch button. This is no small figure. It's 20% of the world's oil, which could disappear from the market or be held hostage, depending on how Tehran decides to play its cards today. This is no longer just another regional standoff. This is Iran openly challenging the United States, declaring that the Strait of Hormuz now belongs to them. They have reactivated their fortified launch sites. The mobile missile launchers on trucks and underground facilities that the enemy had deployed should have been neutralized several months ago. But the American military did not respond with a strong statement. They did not call a press conference or send another diplomatic warning. CENTCOM responded the way CENTCOM responds when someone tries to close an international waterway. The Arleigh Burke-class IS-45 sailed straight through the strait, intercepting missiles and drones in real time and destroying 6 Iranian speedboats in a single operation. That's the signal. When Iran says this is our waterway now, the U.S. Navy responds by passing through it again and again and again. The weapons are ready for action. The systems are activated, and they are ready to strike back at the very same targets from which the threats were launched. It's as if Iran had set up a toll booth on the highway, and the U.S. Navy simply drove through it several times in a row in its largest, most heavily armed truck, simultaneously aiming its guns at it. But before we analyze the full structure of the missile network, the specific systems that Iran has restored, and what the American targeting package now looks like, and believe me, we'll get to that, and there'll be a lot there. You need to understand the big picture, because we're not just talking about missiles on the coast, we're talking about a regime that survived the largest coordinated air campaign in decades, lost its supreme leader on the very first day, saw its defense industry destroyed by more than 90%, and yet managed to stand again at the Strait of Hormuz and say, we've restored 30 of those 3 facilities. And what are you going to do with them now? The SNT's answer: give us 48 hours and we'll show you what exactly we're going to do. And to truly understand why this moment is so important, we need to look at the bigger picture. These aren't just missiles that suddenly appeared on the coast. This is a regime that should have been on its knees, but somehow found the strength to rise again at the most critical point on the planet. The Strait of Hormuz is just 21 nautical miles wide at its narrowest point, just 21 miles. But this tiny stretch of water is the artery through which approximately 20% of the world's maritime oil trade passes. Around 20 million barrels of crude oil and petroleum products flow every day. Block it, restrict traffic, or turn it into a toll road, and it won't just be the region that suffers. The shock waves will ripple through the entire global economy. Iran understands this better than anyone. For decades, they have built their entire defense doctrine around control of this waterway. They invested enormous resources in coastal missile systems, mobile launchers, underground bunkers carved into the rocky coastline, and even submarine bases literally built into the cliffs. It sounds like something out of a thriller until you realize it's all real. Now let's talk about what Iran went through before this recovery. In the early stages of the conflict, they absorbed what CENTCOM described as the largest coordinated airstrike campaign in decades. Their supreme leader was eliminated on the very first day. Their defense industry, the factories, production lines, and warehouses that fueled the missile program, according to Admiral Brad Cooper, were more than 90% destroyed. By all the classic laws of military logic, Iran should have been strategically paralyzed. Their power projection capability had to be destroyed. Their fleet of speedboats, which I call the Mosquito Fleet, had been seriously devastated. During routine patrols earlier this year, American forces observed 20 to 40 of these small boats harassing ships. Now that number has been reduced to 2 per patrol. This is a measurable and obvious success for the American Bomber Force campaign. But this is where the story becomes alarming. While the world watched the Mosquito Fleet dwindle, Iran quietly operated during the ceasefire. They restored operational access to 30 of the 33 hardened missile sites along the strait. They rebuilt mobile launchers. They reconnected the command nodes and did so right under the noses of international monitoring. This creates a serious gap between what the Trump administration is saying publicly and what American intelligence is reporting behind closed doors. The New York Times was the first to break the story. Then virtually identical assessments appeared in the Washington Post. Senior American officials are now privately describing Iran as having partially or fully regained combat capability, to a degree completely unrevealed in public statements. And this rupture is dangerous, because while diplomats talk about de-escalation, Iran has effectively declared that the Strait of Hormuz is now under their control. They have created the so-called Persian Gulf and Strait Authority under the auspices of the CSR. They are charging ships up to $2 million for passage and challenging the United States, offering to do something about it. This is not random aggression, it is calculated. Iran understands that as long as these 30 missile sites remain active, they have leverage. They can threaten global oil supplies at any moment and can increase or decrease tensions as regulators. And every day that these sites are operational, they gain time to restore their remaining capabilities. In his public statements, Admiral Brad Cooper, commander of CENTCOM, has tried to create a picture of Iran's serious weakening. And to be fair, some of this is true, especially regarding their surface fleet. But classified assessments paint a much more dire picture. Iran still retains approximately 70% of its pre-war missile stockpile, including modern anti-ship cruise missiles, with a range significantly greater than the width of the strait itself. So we come to the conclusion that the regime that suffered the heaviest blow in its modern history has managed to restore the core element of its defensive strategy right at the throat of the global energies market. And they don't hide it, they brag about it. This brings us to the central question of this video. What exactly has Iran restored? How dangerous is it, really? And what is the United States prepared to do about it? So on to the part you've been waiting for. What exactly has Iran managed to restore, and why does it pose a serious threat? Iran has restored operational access to 30 of its 33 missile sites along the Strait of Hormuz. This is a remarkable speed of restoration during the ceasefire. These are not simple mobile missile launchers parked in the open in the desert. These are fortified, multi-layered coastal defense facilities forming one of the world's most sophisticated A2/AD networks, anti-access and anti-maneuver systems. Each site includes mobile truck-mounted launchers capable of quickly moving between pre-prepared positions, underground storage facilities designed to withstand heavy bombardment, radar guidance systems, and integrated drone platforms. Many of these sites had to be breached by 5,000-pound GBU-72 Bearbuster bombs during the initial campaign. The fact that Iran managed to return most of them to service in just a few months speaks both of its determination and of its considerable engineering capabilities. The main coastal missile systems along the strait are the Nur and Qasr anti-ship cruise missiles. Both domestically developed missiles have a confirmed range of 100 to 200 kilometers. Their range is significantly greater than the width of the Strait of Hormuz. From their perspective, the entire waterway is right in their backyard. These missiles fly at low altitude, making them difficult to detect. At the final stage, they use active radar homing warheads to lock onto moving ships. Then comes the Khalizfars, a ballistic anti-ship missile that Iran has extensively tested in exercises. It's designed for high-speed dives and can carry a heavy warhead, making it particularly dangerous against large oil tankers and even warships. This is not an experimental weapon. Iran has spent decades refining this doctrine specifically for the geographic features of the Strait of Hormuz. They know every current, every shipping route, and every choke point there better than almost any other nation on Earth. What makes all this even more impressive and alarming? The infrastructure that supports these missiles. Iran has submarine bases literally carved into the rocky coastline. These underground shelters allow submarines to enter and exit right through the mountain range, remaining protected from aerial reconnaissance and strikes. This is engineering. A supervillain level threat, the kind you see in movies and think is impossible in reality until you realize it exists. Now let's talk about another developing threat, which CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper pointed out in his recent Senate testimony. He said, and I quote, "The days of $35,000 drones are behind us. Today we are facing jet-powered drones with high-end sensors, electronic warfare systems, and electronic intelligence systems. This is a completely different level of threat. These are no longer cheap quadcopters. These are fast, high-tech platforms capable of overloading defenses, both in numbers and with modern countermeasures." During the active phase of the conflict, Iran even struck a nuclear power plant in the UAE using drones while the opposition was in effect. This one incident says everything you need to know about how seriously Tehran takes ceasefire agreements when the Islamic Republic of Iraq wants to send a message. And then the nuclear shadow looms over all of this. American intelligence assessments show that Iran still retains approximately 70% of its pre-war missile stockpile. This includes long-range ballistic missiles capable of carrying nuclear warheads should Iran ever cross that threshold. This is why nuclear negotiations are constantly breaking down. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi wrote in an ex-official post, "Zero nuclear weapons means we have a deal. Zero enrichment means no deal." This is not diplomacy. It is a hardline ultimatum backed by missiles. Meanwhile, the Trump administration, through Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, has made it clear that even a 1% enrichment capability is unacceptable. These positions are not just far apart, they are on different planets. And while all this is happening, the ICC has taken its audacity to a new level. They launched an official verified X account for the so-called Persian Gulf and Strait Authority. Yes, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps now openly maintains a social media account that manages an illegal toll system in the internationally recognized strait. They charge up to $2 million per vessel, accepting payment in Chinese yuan through the KNU Bank, or even Bitcoin and USDT. Just think about it. The KRC accepts cryptocurrency for the passage of oil tankers through one of the planet's most important energy corridors. This is no longer just a challenge. This is turning a strategic choke point into a source of income for an organization designated as a terrorist organization. Of course, no threat assessment would be complete without an analysis of vulnerabilities. And Iran has them. Their entire doctrine is built on saturation attacks, massive coordinated strikes from several directions simultaneously to overwhelm a ship's defenses. But once such formations are detected by American intelligence assets, which occurs at distant approaches, they lose the element of surprise. U.S. Navy ships and aircraft can begin the targeting cycle long before the threat approaches. Furthermore, coordinated missile and boat attacks rely heavily on a resilient command and control system. CENTCOM has been targeting these nodes since the very beginning of Operation Epic Fury. Some facilities were even deliberately left intact so that American intelligence could monitor communications, a classic tactic of battlefield reconnaissance. And the fact that Iran restored 30 of the 3 facilities during the ceasefire effectively provided CENTCOM with fresh, high-quality targeting data. Finally, there is the domestic political reality. The man technically considered Iran's supreme leader, Maba, has barely appeared in public since taking power. No new videos, no public appearances, not even at his father's memorial. American officials believe he was wounded and disfigured in the attack that killed his father. Real power has shifted to a military council, controlled by hardline IRGC generals. These are people who benefit from maintaining an aggressive course. For them, softening their stance looks like capitulation. And capitulation means losing the power they consolidated during the war. This creates a dangerous decision-making structure. A committee of hardline security officials who benefit from constant tension, not a settlement. This is the threat Iran poses now, a restored coastal missile network, a growing fleet of jet-powered drones, fortified underground infrastructure, a multi-million-dollar illegal tax system, and a leadership comprised of people who consider de-escalation a defeat. The question is no longer whether Iran is dangerous. The question is what the United States is willing to do about it.